Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependummy Dummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. Now, in your 20s, you're finding yourself exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in shit relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. Codependency is a way of being where we put the feelings, wants, and needs of others above our own in an unconscious attempt to meet our own feelings, wants, and needs. Sorry to break it to you, sis, but that is not sustainable. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hello, Newman. Hello, Jerry. Hello, listener. Hello, Marissa. Welcome to episode 50 of the Codependummy Dummy podcast. Welcome. I am Marissa Esquibel, your hostess mostest, and the beginning of the episode was in homage to Seinfeld, for anyone who hasn't seen it. Today, episode 50, we will be discussing the separation of tasks. Ooh, separation of tasks. Yes. Separation like boundaries, limits, division, etc. Before that, a few things, baby girl. How are you doing? Or more importantly, how are you feeling? How have you been feeling lately? What have you done recently? What comes to mind when I ask something you've done recently that you are proud of? You're proud of yourself. What, if anything, are you failing to acknowledge that needs acknowledging right now? It's muy importante, very important to check in with yourself on the regularly, for all those boomer listeners. I hope to serve as a door to those check-ins, to developing your consciousness. But it's you who needs to push open the door and then do all the internal work once you are in there. Okay, so keep checking in. Pay attention. This upcoming Thursday in the United States, I will be celebrating Thanksgiving with my family. Yeah, I will be celebrating the day of giving thanks. And in anticipation of that celebration, I just want to say thank you. Gracias. Dankeschön. Merci to you. Thank you for listening today. Thank you for those of you who have listened to all 50 episodes. Those who have listened to 25, this might be your first one. I am grateful to all of you. I'm grateful to you for being a listener, and I appreciate, I give thanks to you and for you. What are you feeling grateful for in the moment, the hour, this day, this week? As I was preparing this episode, reflecting on that, I am grateful to share with you all. My nephew is on the way. So I am grateful for that. He's due December 1st, and I'm grateful for the honor and privilege to be an aunt. That's a big thank you this holiday. So, despite the theme of this upcoming holiday, Thanksgiving, thanks, some of you, understandably, may not be feeling so thankful. For some, family is easy. I don't know a lot of people like that, but for some, I imagine it's easy. And for others, like myself at times, being around family is fucking hard. Family, arguably, is where our codependency all started. So, with that in mind, I want to remind you of my new resource, the premier product of the podcast, the Confiding Codependummy. 30 days of journaling prompts for a less codependent and more conscious you. In it, there are 30 questions, 30 writing prompts, journaling prompts about family, experiences in your past that contributed to your codependency. There are questions on codependency in your life today, like, are you going above and beyond this holiday? And then there are prompts with a focus on the future and what you want your healing from codependency to look like, what you want that conscious life, that codependent diamond life to be. It's all about journaling and all to help you confide in yourself, right? We're building that self-reliance, being less of a codependent dummy, more of a self-reliant codependent diamond. This month, the month of November, to offer thanks, the collection of journaling prompts, it's priced at $30, but now through December 1st. So like midnight of November 30th, it's just $20. So go to codependummy.com/tools for healing to get your copy today. And be prepared for other tools being added as we proceed forward to the next 50 episodes. Speaking of confiding in yourself, relying on yourself, you can also take on the 30-day self-validation challenge. It's free, completely free, gratis. And in it, you'll get a script to review your day. If you're catching up, we started the self-validation challenge thanks to a listener, Nathan, coming on. I believe that was June 21st, talking about how he needed to learn to validate himself. So from that episode, created this resource. Check it out, codependummy.com/challenge to develop the ability to validate your goddamn self. And to keep it simple, go to codependummy.com for all of this, all of these resources. And while I'm here reminding you of ways to support the podcast and support yourself, friendly reminder to share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a rating or write a review. It all counts. That is it with the reminders. Let's dive into today's topic, this week's topic, this episode 50's topic, the separation of tasks. All right. Recently, everyone, girl, I have been reading and studying the work of Mr. Alfred Adler, an Austrian medical doctor and psychotherapist. Long story short, around 1900, Adler collaborated with Mr. Sigmund Freud, Mr. Carl Jung, right? OG's godfathers of psychotherapy as we know it today. They collaborated with a bunch of other dudes, but they're like the three most well-known. Adler, you may recognize him from terms like inferiority complex, style of life or lifestyle. We use that word a lot. And birth order. He was really into birth order. So you may have heard that on this podcast with the other mental health content that you consume. And for myself, being a psychotherapist, I know a decent amount of Freud and Carl Jung. Yeah, that's how I'm pronouncing it. But not a lot about Adler. And what I have been reading, I am loving it. So I do encourage, if this resonates, you can check out, I've been reading some of Adler's actual books, which 1900 language. I'm a therapist, so I like it. But there are two books for everyone, helpful for all of us. First book, The Courage to be Disliked. Second book, follow up to that book, The Courage to be Happy, by Fumitake Koga and Ichiro Kishimi. It's originally from their Japanese authors and it's been translated. So Adler, I would argue, encouraged codependent behaviors and tendencies. And he went so far as to assert that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems. That is a bold generalization. And he stuck by it. And I'm reading into and contemplating that and looking at my behaviors, actions, inactions. I'm like, does it all boil down to interpersonal problems? Something to contemplate for all of us. And yeah, since it has been resonating so much, be forewarned that Adler may be sprinkled in to upcoming episodes. Be prepared. And We've been recording for a little bit, so I'm just going to take a sip of some water. Everyone, let's take a water break. Cheers. Okay. Currently in the zeitgeist, how smart do I sound saying that word? But currently in the zeitgeist, we often refer to the term boundaries. I've had quite a few episodes on the concept of boundaries. And I see it and you see it on Instagram. We read books about it. We talk about it. Our therapists mention it. We mention it to our therapists. Just boundaries ad infinitum. Boundaries in 2021 are what Adler called the separation of tasks around 1921, 100 years ago. So separation of tasks. Let's break down what, okay, so separate, divide, disperse. What are tasks, right? I know what tasks are, but in this context, a task, according to Google, is, quote, a piece of work to be done or undertaken. Similar words, synonyms for tasks are a job, a duty, a chore, a charge, labor. In order to write this episode, I had a few tasks, a few pieces of work, a few duties, charges, chores, like sitting down and writing the episode, sitting down and recording the episode, sitting down and posting the fucking episode. These are my tasks for my podcast. No one else can do them. Now, being a former codependummy, and sometimes still acting like one, I can admit that in my way of being formerly, I did my tasks. I did your tasks and your mom's tasks and my mom's tasks without even truly discerning which tasks were mine and which were yours. Everyone's task was my task, right? It was like, what's my task is my task. What's your task is my task. But then sometimes being codependent, I acted like what was my task was my task, but you should have known that you could have taken on this task for me because I do so many tasks for you and you're indebted to me. That was a long sentence that could have been after the colon in my autobiography, right? But wrong. It's so wrong. Adler encourages that when one is confronted with a task, when one is tasked with a task, ours or someone else's, implementing Adlerian psychology, he would encourage us to consider a new perspective via the separation of tasks. How do we go about doing this? We ask really one question: whose task is this? And if it helps, you can ask a following question: who will ultimately pay the consequences if this task is not completed? If the answer isn't me, then that task is technically not yours. And that is when you separate. You separate. Separation of tasks. Adler discourages us to not intrude on other people's tasks. And look at that language. He says we are intruding when we right? Stay in your lane. If you go into someone else's lane, you're going to hit another car. He even suggested that in general, all interpersonal relationship troubles are caused by intruding on other people's tasks or having one's tasks intruded on. Look at these big global statements. We'll have to investigate, but let's say it and then we'll investigate. He says, carrying out the separation of tasks is enough to change one's interpersonal relationships dramatically. If you want to change your relationships, girl, I encourage you to try to experiment, to test separating your tasks from others. How about we use an example from my own life to help with our understanding, shall we? It's story time. And I'm going to talk about my husband, who coincidentally I can hear right now talking. And we're just sending love to him. We're trying to soundproof everyone. I know I keep saying it, and we keep trying. So just sending love and light to my husband, his booming voice. Speaking of that man, I met him in early 2014. And at the time, I had been going to therapy off and on for about 6 years. I had attended support groups, and I had been single from alcoholic ex-boyfriends, because that's all I dated, for about 3 years, right? So I'd done a lot of internal work to attract a different kind of relationship, different kind of partner. And he was great. It was great. Evidently, it was great because we're still together. And I love and adore him so much and his booming voice. But he was and is not perfect. Being the codependummy I was at the time, I took it upon myself to address his imperfections. One of them being his self-care or lack of self-care. Early on, girl, in our relationship, I became preoccupied, nagging, and controlling with his manscaping, right? The upkeep of his beard, mustache, nose hair, haircut, ear cleanliness, just manscaping his chest hair. He's Armenian. He's a hairy guy. I became preoccupied, nagging, controlling with his hygiene, his exercise, and his weight. We would be on a date together, and looking up at him, since he is taller than me, I would think, gosh, his nose hair is so long. Doesn't he see how long it is? God, I need to remind him to clip his nose hair. Oof. That was an early thought when we were still creating our foundation. So I didn't say it at first, but over time, with a sense of security, a sense of loyalty, a sense of commitment, I did say that. And it became a thing for years where I would point it out and I'd act repulsed. And I'd remind him to take care of his nose hair. Looking back, I admit his nose hair, it didn't necessarily bother, repulse, disgust, that's the same word, but it didn't do those things to me. It really, it's there. I see it. It's not hitting me or touching me or, has boogers on it. Nothing like that. I was affected by it because I was so self-conscious of what other people would think of his nose hair and what they think of me because I was dating someone with that kind of nose hair. Being so obsessed with everyone's attention, affection, and approval that underneath my controlling and nagging and preoccupation was my fear of losing the attention, affection, and approval from others. I remember being horrified when my dad told me that my male cousin, who is pretty good at manscaping, my dad told me that my cousin told him, he made a comment about my then boyfriend, now husband's nose hair. And I was like, oh God, my cousin thinks that. He told my dad told me. Ugh. Oh no. And it was an ongoing issue. But technically, I want to highlight my husband's nose hair is his task. He ultimately will pay the consequences socially, if there are any, for his nose hair hanging out and about. I ultimately will not pay the consequence, and I ultimately am not in charge of his nose hair upkeep. This preoccupation was paralleled my nagging, controlling about the length of his fingernails and toenails, the length of his hair, right? How often you got a haircut. how many times he worked out a week, and his weight. Picture us sitting at dinner, going on a date together, relaxing, and you could find me in a certain interval saying, your nails are too long. That's gross. If we had a wedding to attend, I would be on him for weeks. Husband, you need to get a haircut. Call the barber right now. We're not doing anything. Call him right now. When we're relaxing and watching a movie, right? I was just on him. When he stopped exercising, maybe it was a busy season at work, he's learning to create that healthy lifestyle. And I would sarcastically make comments about his dad bod without being a dad. I would judge his food choices when we ate out, like, oh, you're going to get that dish? I don't know. And I would make statements at the bottom depth, rock bottom. Sometimes we would talk about it. We have these talks and discussions, and I would threaten, if you keep this up, I'm not going to be sexually attracted to you. It's like, yeah, I would say things like, you need to take care of yourself to take care of me. And I alluded to this, but we would argue. We'd have talks. I'd write him a letter to share my concerns. And let's take a water break. Cheers, everybody. Everyone get hydrated. Let's get our thirst need met. I would also bemoan with my friends, family, and colleagues. Just complain about it. If you were to ask me back then, Marissa, whose task is this? Who will ultimately pay the consequences if your husband's, then boyfriend's self-care is not completed? I would have said, me. I'm going to have to take care of him when he's old because he neglected himself. Which, isn't entirely untrue, but while I was judging, making commentary, and honestly providing conditional love, I was conveying very hurtful messages to him. Excuse me. Right? When I would comment about his nails, it was because we were sitting somewhere and he was rubbing his tired eyes. And that created emotional distance. Right? Who knows how our conversation would have gone that night had I not said, your nails are gross. And he'd be walking around without a shirt on, maybe after getting out of the shower. And he'd have to be wary that I might make a negative comment or sarcastic joke. And in anticipation for special events, it wasn't, oh, the accommodations and, oh, we should plan on this. It was me saying, you need to get a haircut, you need to get a haircut, you need to get a haircut. Right? Like your hair is not up to par. Your hair is embarrassing, inappropriate, you're inappropriate. And it even went to the extent that for Christmas one year, my mom bought him, out of sincere kindness, she bought him a manscaping gift where he went to this really nice salon and they did the works. But reflecting, I'm like, oh God, if I hadn't hounded him so much, I don't know if that would have been her idea of a good Christmas present. And speaking of my mom, not to blame her, and just acknowledging contributing factors. My mom and my sisters and we, being a family of women, my dad has been the recipient of comments, negative comments about his clothing choices, the length of his toenails, his hair routine, and so on. So it's understandable that I might model some of these same interactions and make the same type of comments. And also, it hasn't necessarily worked on my dad. He still makes certain clothing choices and does certain things. So, okay, Marissa, the preoccupation, comments, and attempt to control, they don't work. So, some compassion that this has, been a generational pattern in the family. But yeah, it hasn't worked. So, okay, lost my argument for why I do it still, why I have done it. And big picture, I need to highlight that what I haven't told you is all the time I was hyper focused on his tasks. I was neglecting my own. I was neglecting my own fucking tasks. Early on in our relationship, I was still binging thanks to not focusing on my task of healing from that and incorporating healthier coping skills while dealing with the stress of being in graduate school and everything else going on in my life. That was my task, my self-care task that I was not addressing. And he never said anything. He never says anything. He is so loving and so supportive in that aspect of my healing journey, from binging, weight, body image, codependency. Another area in my life I wasn't dealing with back then, I used to pick. I used to pick. I'd pick my acne. I'd pick at my nails. I'd pick at my cuticles. I'd pick at my hair. Trichotillomania, anyone? Dabbled in that off and on for decades. And there were seasons when I would pick more and seasons where I would pick less. Thankfully, with binging and picking, less pretty much gone. Because those were my tasks. And at the time, I was not addressing them. Well, I was like starting to address them, but I wasn't fully addressing them. I'll give myself that. There I was, making comments about his nose hair, his nails, his exercise, his weight. When my cuticles were bloodied, my weight was fluctuating, my hair was on the floor after a certain exam, and I was working out regularly to counterbalance the binges I had every so often. Not only was I taking on his tasks, thinking about problem solving, having long and deep talks, like, what does this mean? Sharing about it in my support groups, talking about it with my family, just the obsessive, controlling, nagging. Not only was I taking on his tasks, but I was vehemently, I think it's a silent H. You girls let me know. Vehemently neglecting my own. In his writings, Adler says, when someone like me, when girls like us are confronted with a need to separate tasks between ourselves and another, like a partner, Adler says, that the act of believing is also the separation of tasks. You believe in your partner. You believe in the other person. That's your task. I had to learn to believe in my husband. I had to learn to believe my husband that he could take care of his self-care while I took care of my own. And I'll extend that to, I have to believe in him that he can take care of himself while I take care of myself. And just support and encourage each other. Adler adds that when we push our wishes without having drawn that line of separation, before we know it, we're engaging in stalker-like intervention. He says, suppose your partner did not act as you wished. Would you still be able to believe in that person? Would you still be able to love that person? I was like a stalker. Like, hey, did you call? Hey, did you call the barber? Hey, did you clip your nose hair? Oh, God. Okay. Did you do it yet? Did you do it? You need to do it. Are you going to do it? Well, you can do it right now. Do you want to do it right now? I cannot recall all the details, but I'm certain I was texting him, calling him, talking with him in person, constantly, like a stalker. a hurtful, unloving, and unkind stalker. Fast forward. What does it look like today? The same. No, it's totally different. So on his own accord, this has been my experience this past year and a half, which is the same year and a half we've been in quarantine. I have a morning routine that I love doing. And part of it, I read. I read for a decent amount of time every morning. And while I'm out in our living room reading, my husband he wakes up at I don't know, he wakes up pretty early for him. He used to sleep in, let's say 7. And he'll come out and kiss me goodbye on his way to the gym. 2 or 3 days a week. He goes to the gym. I'm like, bye. All on his own. He joined a gym on his own. He goes to the gym on his own. We're not workout buddies. Nope. He has his passions for exercise that are not mine. All on his own. That is his task. When I'm in between therapy sessions with my patients, I'll walk out to make some tea, maybe eat a meal, and I hear a noise coming from the back of our house, and it's him cutting his nails. Not at my behest. I'm like, oh, all right. Way to go. You guys, at random hours of the day, he's showering, he's clipping his beard, he's trimming his nose hair. And thanks to COVID, he grew out his hair to his shoulders, and now he sports a beautiful man ponytail. I also am not pulling my hair. I am not binging. I am not preoccupied with his self-care, nor having these meetings to talk about it. It's amazing. It is amazing. And it's not perfect. Okay. Has he gone to the dentist in the past couple of years? No. Does his nose hair make an appearance every now and then? Yes. But those are his tasks. Those are his tasks. If my cousin, if anyone looks at my husband and thinks, oof, that guy's nails are so long, or oof, his nose hair, that's their task to deal with their reaction to him. Their reaction is their task. My husband's self-care is his task. My task is to focus on my tasks. Sometimes I will make requests. Hey, boo, your chest hair is a little out of control. Mind cleaning it up sometime this week. I'm not taking on his task. I'm not being controlling or nagging. I am making a request. Adler encourages making requests and letting it go. And you can also assist in helping with tasks. But Adler states one has to pay attention. He does not recommend the non-interference approach. Non-interference is the attitude of not knowing, not even being interested in knowing what another person is doing. No, it's not like, oh, okay, I'm gonna let it go and not say anything. Like we're in a relationship. We're gonna have to address it at times. It's okay. Adler encourages, if there is an issue with an undone task, one tells the other person that is their task, and one lets them know that one is ready to assist them whenever they have the urge to address the task. But one must not intrude on the other person's tasks. When no requests are being made, it does not do to meddle in things, okay? Example, right now it just came to me. My nephew is due December 1st. In order to be around a baby right now, it's encouraged, needed for my sister. It's necessary to have a flu shot, to have a Tdap, and to have a vaccine, COVID vaccine. I, Miss Responsible with her tasks, got that done last month? Yeah, sometime in October. Has my husband, my nephew's uncle, who's my husband, has he gotten his flu shot and Tdap? No. Am I preoccupied? Slightly. And I am asking myself, whose task to make the appointment and get his flu shot and Tdap, whose task is that? And it's his. Who will ultimately pay the price? Who will suffer the consequences? He will. If the baby is born and we're able to see him in a very short amount of time, and my husband is confronted with the fact that he has yet to get those 2 shots, he will not get to meet the baby. That's his task. It's his consequence. I will be there enjoying my fresh out of the oven nephew. I may be sad slightly, but it's my husband's task. And my task is to deal with those feelings in therapy, journaling, talking with my girls, and letting it go. Talk about the toughest description for a codependummy. Don't intrude, don't meddle, assist yourself, focus on your tasks, but that's our task. So your homework is to apply the separation of tasks to your life. I'm going to spell these steps out in the show notes. You guys can check them out there. Step number 1, to separate tasks, pay attention. Step number 2. When you're about to do something, ask yourself, whose task is this? And if you need clarification, who will ultimately pay the consequence if this task goes undone? Step 3. If it's your task, complete your task. Step 4. If it's another's task, if it's someone else's task, you can decide whether A, relinquish that to them, or B, offer assistance. Step 5, muster all the might and will it will take for you to not intrude or meddle in another's task. Go for a walk, take deep breaths, journal, call a friend, listen to this podcast, hop in the shower, do what you need to do to separate the tasks. SEPARATION. Step 6. While you are letting others deal with their own tasks, you look down, you look inward, you tune into your heart and soul and identify any tasks of your own that you are neglecting. Step 7, if you can identify an undone task of your own, I encourage you to start addressing it this week. That is your homework. A preview of what will happen if you don't separate your tasks. Adler says, intervening in other people's tasks and taking on other people's tasks turns one's life into something heavy and full of hardship. He says, if you are leading a life of worry and suffering, which stems from interpersonal relationships, learn the boundary of, from here on, that is not my task, and discard other people's tasks. That is the first step. That is the first step toward lightening the load and making life simpler. Thank you. That is a wrap. Episode 50. Whose task is this? I will see you next week. Bye. Happy Thanksgiving. Hey girl, it's Marissa again. I'm not like a regular podcaster, I'm a cool podcaster, right? Thank you for listening and staying till the end. You can find me on Instagram at Therapy with Marissa. Email me, marissa@codependummy.com. Check out codependummy.com for more information on the show. And baby girl, a subscribe, rating, and review would be much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. And now, the disclaimer. Girl, this is not therapy and I am not your therapist. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, publisher, or guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional service. If you want or need a professional, please find one.